Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. Today, Bryce Simon is in the building with me, and we are going to break down the 2024 NBA draft for the first time in weeks, probably.
It's
Like,
been
it's
a
been a
minute.
while since we've really sat down and talked about the NBA draft. And frankly, I've had a couple people ask me why we haven't been doing that. Truly, it's just because the listenership goes down when we talk about this draft. Whereas last year, when we talked about the NBA draft on this show, listenership would go up because people were super interested in Chet Holmgren, or not Chet Holmgren, I'm sorry, Victor Wembanyama, in Scoot Henderson, and the Thompson twins, and everybody that was there. Whereas this year, it feels like there's a little bit less excitement, and I feel like that's kind of seeping into what's going on league wide. So that's the reason we haven't been doing it. We're going to start to pick it up though here a little bit. I'm probably going to try and start interviewing players on this channel. Those won't happen for another month in terms of when they get released, but I have a couple tentatively scheduled already to kind of go through and break down tape with them, go through things on this channel. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. But Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
I mean, listen, I've been chomping at the bit to talk NBA draft, but truly, Sam, we have so much time until the draft still. We still have, it just hit February 1st today. We have March Madness. We have all of this stuff. We have, and the pre-draft process changes everything. I feel pretty good about where I'm at with my big board and the work that I've done, the games that I've watched. Like, I've been doing a ton behind the scenes. Every day I watch some NBA games to stay up with the channel and what you and I are going to talk about. But every day I watch some college games as well. And I did a lot of stuff early in the season. Now it's kind of rounding back in. How has Ryan Dunn been playing lately? How has this guy been playing lately? How are the Colorado guys playing? All of that. Try to check in on the overseas guys. So it was time to talk about it again. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, the nice thing is you have your own podcast, right? It's the Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecenie. So you can talk about whatever you want. But part of that is also you're going to talk about what the listeners want to listen to and what the viewers want to view. Like, at the end of the day, people can't fault us for that. We got to talk about what people are tuning in for.
It's absolutely right. Like, I really do try to look through the metrics constantly and see what people care about. And the thing is, though, that I think our draft listeners are the most engaged and into it, right? So I love to, even though the numbers, look, if the numbers aren't as good for the show, whatever, it's fine. I know that there's a core group of everybody here that will love it, and I'm super excited to share that with you guys. So let's talk about this. The way that we're going to structure this is I sent you 7 questions about this 2024 NBA draft, and I think that we're going to look at this from a baseline perspective as we move toward the trade deadline, as we move toward the closer and closer to the NBA draft itself. We're still, I guess, 2/3 of the way through the college season. So there's a lot to kind of dive into and discuss. Let's just kind of talk about it. So we're going to ask 7 questions. We're going to break them down and we're going to go from there. And if you guys have questions, I've seen a couple in the comments, we'll probably answer them later on at the end of the show. But I'm excited to dive into the 7 questions that I've kind of set out here because I think it'll answer a lot of different kinds of things is where I'm at.
Yeah, no, it'll be a good jumping off point, right? Because that's what's kind of hard sometimes with the draft. Like, you can just do a mock draft, right? And then you talk about every player and all that. Like, that's kind of the easy thing to do. So I was really interested when you said we were going to do draft on Thursday. I was waiting for those questions to come in because it was like, okay, what context are we going to use? How are we going to drive the conversation? It's going to be good regardless. No, you could come up with whatever, but I think this will be good. We're starting at the top. We're moving through different portions of the draft. We're incorporating the NBA and the deadline that's just a week away. I think that was really smart. So I'm excited to get into all of it.
That's right. Okay, let's go. Question number 1, Bryce. Who is the number 1 pick in the 2024 NBA draft if the draft was held today?
Yeah, I have Alex Sarr. He is my number 1 at the top of my board. And crazily, The other day, I actually put him in his own tier. Now, like not the Victor tier. Like I want to be clear here. It's not the Victor tier that you had last year. I'm just saying I tier my guys out because kind of my personal draft philosophy in terms of fit, best player available, stuff like that. And so I think right now he is kind of my clear number one. Now, there's other guys I really like, and this could absolutely change. See a Nikola Topic comment, like he's right there in it as well. But I think for me, Alex Sarr has separated himself just a little bit. And a lot of it has to do with archetype of player, how successful we've seen that be. And just like, man, like if you can get that, that's really valuable to an NBA team. We've talked a lot about this kid. I know you've seen him in person. I'll let you cook a little bit more, but I love the defense. He covers so much ground. He blocks shots. He can be disruptive. He can really move for a guy his size. And then I think I buy into some of the offensive stuff in terms of the growth and where that's going to go as he enters the league and continues to get older and all of that.
Yeah. So Sarr, I think, is the favorite name that I get most often from NBA executives, I guess, right now. Mostly it's because I think that I think more of them have seen Alex at this point, maybe, than have seen, I don't know, like maybe this version of Alex versus like this version of Zach Rizzachet, who has clearly taken a leap from where he was last year, at this time when he went to Hoop Summit, and then, last summer when he played on the team with Alex Sarr for the U19s, right? Like Rizzachet has taken a leap since then. And I think that fewer teams have seen that guy than have seen Alex at this point. I do get like a couple of stray Cody Williamses from time to time.
Sure.
I do get a couple of, stray Nikola Topic's. I will get a couple of, like I think I've gotten like a Ron Holland in there at some point, but it's all over the map is the easiest way to say it. And I think that this is a bit of a cop out, but the number one pick will depend on how the lottery falls. Whereas last year,
yeah,
Victor Wembanyama was going number one overall, no matter who had the pick. It did not matter if the Spurs got it, if the Blazers got it, if whoever got it, it was going to be Victor. Even when the Pistons had number one in 2021, Cade Cunningham was going number one no matter what. This year, I think it's a lot more similar to like 2013, something like that, where it's going to depend on who gets the pick. Now, again, I think that the guy that I have gotten the most from teams is Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is 7'1" with a 7'5" wingspan, playing over here for the Perth Wildcats. I got a chance to see Alex in person on Saturday. It was great. He had arguably his best game of the season. He had 18 points. He had like 5 rebounds, had 6 blocks. I think that like I was sitting next to Olgan Olek, friend of the show, and I looked at Olgan like at the start of the fourth quarter, and I was like, is Alex having like a perfect game right now? Like, is he like 8 for 8, 7 for 7 from the field, like something like that, and is like 6 blocks and like completely dominating the game? And he was like, I think the point literally he was 6 for 6 or 7 for 7 at that point, and he missed a couple of shots at the end, and it was fine. But what I like about Alex is just the ground coverage. He is so elite in terms of being able to just cover an immense amount of ground defensively on an NBA court because he's so fluid athletically. His length and movement ability is uncommon for today's NBA. It's really, really hard to find guys who are capable of just covering this much space and area on a court where in the NBA, spacing in shooting is as prevalent as ever. Having somebody that can cover as much ground as what Alex can, that's the code breaker, the combo breaker. That's how you figure it out at the end of the day. So I think that Alex has been fantastic defensively, rotates incredibly well in help situations. They played Southeast Melbourne in the game that I saw live, and Southeast has Mitch Creek. Mitch Creek is one of the best players in the NBL, wants to, go mid post, be able to occasionally drive from like beyond the 3-point line, but get downhill, get to the rim, try and score. when Alex was on the court, they had typically something like, Christian Doolittle or somebody else like guarding him. And then they had Alex as like the help defender. Mitch Creek just like didn't even try and drive all the way to the rim. Like some other guys did, and they got swatted, but it was noticeable that the court shrunk when Alex Sarr was on the court in a real tangible way for the offense. So I think he's going to be an outstanding defender. I think he's got a shot to be like a Nick Claxton level, extremely high end defensive player. And Nick Claxton is a guy that I thought last year was like a top 10 defender in the NBA. I think that if the same situation existed last season where there were no positions for all defense, Nick Claxton would have been an all defense guy last year for sure. This year, I don't know if that'll quite be the case, but that's kind of like the defensive comp to me, like a little bit skinnier, but makes an elite impact around the basket, makes a phenomenal impact moving around and being able to cover ground defensively. Offensively, I have some questions. I do in terms of role. Somebody, Derek Brown asks in the comments, is Sarr a 4 or a 5? I think he can be a 4 defensively, who's like a weak side rim protector and can guard out on the perimeter and not really have any issues. There's the clip of him defending Ron Holland that I think is like the viral one this year from him, where just switches on to Ron Holland and like completely shuts him down, right? In the G League Ignite Perth series that happened in September. But offensively, he shows some ability to put the ball on the ground. He's comfortable doing it. He shows some ability to shoot. I think long term he'll probably shoot. I've talked a little bit about like his offhand interaction on the ball and like some of the side spin that comes off his release. I think long term he will shoot. He has very clear touch, and I think that these are just like little mechanical things that will get adjusted. Once that happens, I think it allows him to be a 4 or a 5. Ultimately, my biggest question for Alex Sarr is something that somebody else in the comments brought up, which is the rebounding.
Yeah.
And like the physicality. Chet Holmgren, Victor Wembanyama, those guys are just like more natural, high-level, aggressive rebounders than what Alex Sarr is. Alex Sarr plays a lot of minutes like at the 4 next to a Keanu Pinder, next to a guy in Christian Doolittle who's like a big 3, big bulky 4 that often will take on the 5-man when they're on the court together if Pinder isn't out there. But the issue is that he's just kind of high center of gravity and can kind of get like shoved around a little bit here and there. So to me, getting stronger through his lower half and being able to withstand that and being able to anchor at that center position, that's kind of my biggest question. And that's ultimately why you said you have Alex kind of in a tier by himself. I have Alex like in the group with everybody else. And frankly, if you made me bet right now, and look, I think this thing is so wide open, and I think Alex has as good of a chance as anybody to go number 1. I think I would bet against him going number 1 right now, depending on who gets the pick, of course.
Well, and I think that's where I have to continue to reconcile all the questions that everybody in the chat is asking. There was a Pistons fan in here going like, if the Pistons have number 1, can they draft him and play him next to Jalen Duren? And I know that's what they're thinking. And can he play the 4? So I think for me, I have to reconcile how quick do I think the shooting comes, his ability to play the 4 offensively. And if it doesn't, like if I ultimately land like, no, he can't, he's still maybe number 1 on my board, but in the group of all the other guys we're talking about. So like right now, I've kind of always been a little higher just because I've bought into some of the flashes offensively, but I need to like go through this and see how quick I think it's going to happen, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. Because you're right, there's a few teams at the top that maybe already have a guy at the 5, and they're going to, Ricochet makes a lot more sense adding that wing for, the Pistons, for example, would be a lot better fit with somebody like that than with Alex Sarr. So I still have to reconcile that. I have that in my notes as well, that he will like go to the defensive boards, but he's just not physical enough. And so it'll be interesting as he adds that strength. And another place that'll help him, Sam, is even attacking off the bounce. So if he ultimately shoots it, then you want to be able to attack the closeouts while pushing through second phase contact. You have to have a strong lower half. You have to be able to drop your hips and play through that. And so that streak, I mean, he's 18. A lot of these guys we're going to talk about at the top are very young. He doesn't turn 19 until April. So that's a thing to keep in mind as well. So I think he'll get there. Again, I'm a little bit higher, I think, and a believer in his offense. And that what leads me to like him. I don't want to put him on a pedestal as number one. I just have like a small little separation right now between him and those next two guys.
Yeah, and I think and we back in the YouTube comments brings up the ultimate concern here. It's he might need to play next to a center, and if he needs to play next to a center, the skill set is just a little bit less appealing.
Agreed.
Right.
Sure.
From an archetypal perspective, and being able to get all of the skills you need on the court. Like I think that one thing that like, you know, I talk about Jason Timp because Jason's a friend of mine and we talk about this stuff all the time. One thing that Jason talks about in his show regularly and like that we talk about is like there are just requisite skills that you need on the court at all times in the NBA. Like you need point of attack defenders, you need rim protection, you need floor spacing and shooting, you need shot creation, you need rebounding, you need toughness, and like you need energy. Like you need like all of these things. In the best teams, they come together and they have all of those things on the court at once. Having all of those things in like one guy, you know, such as LeBron James, somebody like that, makes things a lot easier, right? Like it just truly makes things drastically easier. And that's why those guys are so valuable. But having all of those skill sets on the court at once is what's valuable. And if Alex isn't a great rebounder and then isn't a great shooter necessarily, it's a lot less appealing, and he
Sure.
becomes like a Nick Claxton, probably going to be more of like a $20 million guy per year as opposed to a number one overall pick kind of player. The other guys that I think are worth just mentioning here, Zach Rizashea has been phenomenal this season. He continues to take strides as a shooter, has been absolutely fantastic on that end. Knocking down shots off the catch, has started to expand a little bit to being able to knock down shots off of movement. Currently playing for Borg over in France. He is averaging, as I pull it up right now for us to talk about, over both French League and Euro Cup competition, 11.5 points per game, shooting 52, 47, 71, averaging 3.4 rebounds per game, and has a negative assist to turnover ratio. Unfortunately, what I like about Rizashea, great shooting, and I think he's awesome on defense. Like I think his help defense, if you put him as the low man, like in the help side, he is incredible. I think like he is absolutely fantastic, being able to fly around and help in that way. On the ball, they've used him occasionally, like at the point of attack. I think the results are a little bit more mixed there, but I think as he gets stronger and gets like a little bit more, kind of evens out his body a little bit better, I think that he will continue to grow in that regard. The other guy here that I get talked to most often is probably, I guess, Cody Williams. Cody is interesting just in terms of unbelievable frame, 6'9", long arms. I'm seriously guessing like 7'1", at least wingspan, could be longer. Strong, like not strong yet, but like has this weird functional strength despite being skinny, to where like he absorbs contact like reasonably well around the rim. Elite level finisher at the rim, much like his brother Jalen is with Oklahoma City. Just a fantastic finisher and driver of the basketball in a straight line. Has potential defensively, I think, not like a difference maker, incredible defender, but a solid defender. Ultimately, what worries me about Cody is like he has never showcased anything as a pull-up player. Like last year, I think I have like 16 games of his on Synergy at Perry High School in Arizona. He was like, I think he took like 10 pull-up jumpers in 16 games in high school. This year, he's not really a pull up guy. Has like a really nice floater game, can get like jump stop, get to that
Great touch.
floater. Has really great touch. The jumper is just really, really, really going to take some time. And I'm curious to see how that goes. Any thoughts on either of those two guys?
Well, I just want to say these are both guys that I came into the process. So I think I've said this. I did some foundational scouting like over the summer. I wanted to get a feel for all of these guys. So like I watched Sarr a little bit and Ricochet and Cody Williams. Ricochet and Cody Williams were two guys I didn't necessarily love, Sam. Like they were like into the first round guys for me at the time. And as I've watched them throughout the season, Cody really has impressed me because I really wasn't necessarily quote unquote seeing it with him in terms of like a lottery guy. And I've really come around because I do kind of buy some of the defensive stuff. The touch is really good. He has a good feel for the game, all of that. But Zach, man, like he's been so good. And he improved so much from the first pro game I watched until now, because even in that, I was like, hey, I think he has it. You can see the potential. But I think this is going to be like a quote unquote pre-draft thing. Like if you draft him, like a guy we may talk about a little bit later, you draft him at the end of the first. So that way he doesn't go higher than you can get him the next year. And he's just played awesome. He's shooting the ball well. And then it's the defense. And again, I had in my notes, I thought a little bit off ball awareness was struggling. And then I would watch a game a few weeks later and it had gotten so much better. And I know somebody asked about the low man. I think he has real potential as a weak side low man rim protector. He's engaged off the ball, on the ball. Even it's not great, but for a 6'9", 6'10" kid, he was navigating ball screens and showed foundational ability there. Again, it's not perfect, but the fact he's doing it and it's not like, oh my gosh, he's dying on every screen, that stood out to me. So he's flown up my personal board. Maybe I just missed it the first time, but I think he's really, really played well.
Just a few questions here. What are Rizichet's strengths outside of shooting? I would say like good transition player, comfortable with the ball, can get out there. Defensively, I think he's fantastic in help situations. I think he has a chance to be like relatively switchable at some point, like not onto the quickest ones. I would be surprised if he ever handles those guys well.
Agreed.
But twos, threes, fours, guys like that, I think he'll be able to handle. And the shooting is so important when you're trying to figure out, does he have any on-ball upside? Because Ricochet is quite comfortable handling the ball. He just can't really go anywhere because he doesn't have any suddenness and any strength right,
or the strength
in his body. Right. Yeah. If you think the strength is going to develop and the shooting is going to hold it like the 50% level, let's say he gets to like 40, 41, 42 or whatever, it'll be easier for him to attack off of closeouts and be like this awesome, like third guy, player to have out there, kind of like a Michael Porter Jr. ish kind of guy, let's call it. I like him a lot. Like, I think that I think it works. I think it's very scalable is the way to put it. His skill set is very scalable.
He's a real off the ball player. I feel like, Sam. I think he cuts well. He can be impactful on the offensive boards. Like I just put in my notes. I know people probably don't like. I just feel like he plays the game the right way. Like you can tell he sees the. Like I know that's kind of cliche in coach speak. I get that people don't always love that, but I don't write it for every guy, and I put it for him. And so I just really enjoy watching him. The on the ball stuff, the off the bounce definitely has room to grow though.
And yeah, that's where, like, to me, the breakdown or like the comparison to Franz Wagner, like, kind of breaks down.
Yeah.
Franz had like some real off-ball juice or on-ball juice that you could see occasionally at Michigan, where like he would be able to run some ball screens and things like that. I haven't really seen that from Ricochet yet. I'm not going to say that he can't do it because, like, again, he's comfortable handling the ball. And I think that his frame is just like a little bit less developed than what Franz's was as a sophomore at Michigan. Even though they were like relatively close to the same age, Franz was a little bit older at that point. I do think that it's going to take some time for Ricochet on the ball, though. And it's like a question if it ever comes, for sure. But in terms of like scalability, ability to knock down shots, be productive, I do think he'll be a good off-ball player. And then stupid question from Bronton. Literally, he puts that. That's not me adding that.
I'm glad you gave that caveat. Sometimes I forget about the audio listeners myself, and so that would have come off real. That would have got aggregated, Sam. That was a good.
That would have. Yeah, that would have been bad. He says, stupid question. Does Jalen help Cody's draft stock at all? Look, people that are traditionalists about this stuff will hate to hear this, but yes, the answer is yes, because Cody's frame, or Jalen's frame particularly, filled out so much as he got older. He got a lot stronger. He got a lot more physical. I think that more than anything, that will show NBA folks that there is a good chance that Cody's frame will also fill out. Cody is a very different frame than Jalen ever had. He is a little bit longer, leaner, skinnier. And Jalen is like an insatiable worker. And from what I understand, like Cody definitely works. Um, I don't know comparatively like how they are to one another necessarily, but Jalen is like elite of the elite of the elite in that regard, and I don't know if Cody has that. So it's I think that what NBA people will take away from the two of them is that Jalen's body filled out later. There's a good shot that Cody's body will continue to fill out and will be valuable here for them. Uh, okay, I don't really need to talk about Nikola Topic in this section yet. I don't think. Great ball screen player. The shooting is like a real question for teams, is what I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about Topic in
Yeah.
previous. I was really excited to see him play with the Red Stars, the new team, and then he got injured, and we haven't seen him for a little bit. So I want to see that. I mean, we've broke it all down though. Like he is a maestro with the ball in his hands. A team that's truly looking for a on-ball guy that runs your offense, can create out pick and roll, all of that. I mean, that's your guy. And like you said, we got to figure out the shooting. I've had questions from the beginning about the defense. I still have him very high. Like, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I do want to see some more. And that's the thing. We still have some time to break this down, even before they get into workouts and all of that.
Yeah, and Regulator brings up Topic shooting 80% plus from the line. It's absolutely true. I think that there's a good shot he will knock down shots at some point. It's just that he has not shot yet off of pull-ups realistically, and it's going to be hard to take him, I think, at one unless that is the case. I'm a big Nikola Topic fan. I have him in the top 5. Like, I really think he's going to be a great long-term pro. I love how creative he is. I think he's super, super sharp. But number one, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to take him.
Yep, I would agree.
Okay. Let's go to number 2. Question 2. What team needs the number 1 overall pick most right now?
So I put the Washington Wizards, and they currently have a 14% chance. I put they need a star, and I realize everybody's immediate pushback is like there's not a star in this draft, or you don't need number 1 to get the star. Like there's like we talked about, essentially you have if I took Sar away or not in his own, like I'd have 6 guys essentially in my first tier for this draft. I mean, essentially that's what it is for me. And so I completely understand that you don't have to get the number 1 pick to get that. I just feel like they're the team that needs maybe the most influx of young talent. Like I realize the Pistons suck. Like they're awful, but they have 4 young guys, that you already have on the roster. Now they could use more young talent, or more talent, I guess I should say.
Yeah.
But I went with the Wizards here.
So the thing is that like all of Detroit, Washington, San Antonio, Charlotte, Portland, Toronto, they could all use this pick. Atlanta, sneaky, could really use this pick. I think the right answer is Washington. They just need the long-term upside in a way that some of these other teams just like have more options there, right? Like I really like Bilal Coulibaly.
Yep.
I think that, like, for instance, Detroit has Cade, has Duran, has Asar, has Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
They have more of the like potential guys that are in like Bilal's tier, or like slightly better or like better in Cade's case, right? So I think that Washington is the right answer here. Can I at least make a case for Charlotte?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll just say the reason I didn't was because of LaMelo, Brandon, and Mark Williams. So that was the reason I didn't have them as high on my list. Is it was kind of a sign of respect in terms of I
Yeah.
like those three guys, and so I'd be
And
interested to.
that's kind of why I want to bring this up.
Okay.
This might be, given how good Brandon Miller looks right now, this might be their last shot to like get a really, really good high end talent here, right? Like Brandon and LaMelo, if LaMelo can stay healthy, like those two guys together might be so good that it keeps them out of like the top 4 or 5 moving forward. If that's the case, I don't think Brandon and LaMelo are going to be so overwhelmingly good together that they can contend for a title. I think that they need one more guy. It could be them. The other team that fits this billing is the Spurs. Victor is coming, and I would bet you that they start to get a little bit more aggressive this summer, given how good Victor has started to look over the course of the last 2 months. I think there is a shot they really, really start to go here in the summer, which means, again, this could be their last chance in a pick like this.
YouTube user brings up an interesting thing here as well. And this kind of depends on how you feel about, what you think Reed Shepherd is, what you think about Isaiah Collier, Rob Dillingham.
Yeah.
Like, if Topic is gone, like, then do they end up with the point guard they need? Or I mean, maybe they don't have, it doesn't have to come in the draft, but it kind of depends on how you feel about some of these other guards as well.
Yeah. I don't think I don't think they're like guard of the future is in this class.
Okay.
You're gonna want like a superstar guard
Sure.
next to Victor Wembanyama, in my opinion, and I think it's more likely they trade for that guy than it is to select him in the draft. I think Washington is the right selection, though, for what it's worth. I think you were right to pick Washington.
So the fun one I kind of put in there was the Bulls, and I realized like they have a very, very low chance of this, but it's like if they sell everything off at the deadline, which I don't know that they're going to do, but if they trade
doesn't
DeRozan,
seem like they will, for what it's worth.
for what it's, yeah, I get it, but if they sold off DeRozan, Levine, Caruso, all of that, like Kobe White's been awesome, all of that stuff, I'm like, man, that's a team that could use just an influx of like excitement with a young player. So I put them in there. And the one with the Hornets makes more sense because after the Wizards, what I started thinking was which team is this like the kind of the final young piece? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think the Hornets are probably the right answer there. And so, yeah. I like it.
Yeah. The Hornets are an interesting one. The last team, I will say, I kind of want Memphis to get it just purely because I would be fascinated to see what Zach Kleiman would do with it.
Yeah.
Like, would he keep it? Would he decide to go trade it for a star? Because look, we can talk about like how much that we think that there isn't, a superstar in this class necessarily, but there are going to be really good players, and having the number 1 overall pick is valuable. And it could be like an enormous trade chip for them as they try to build around Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bain, or they could just take somebody, right? They could take Zach Rizashea, who would be like a perfect fit for their scheme. Like you could get this big wing who can shoot and who can be like a connective tissue player and like a great help defender. Like he's awesome for everything they do. Like Memphis would be really, really fun. I think Memphis would be really, really, really fun.
I also put the Spurs just because I think it'd be fun to see Wemby and Alex Sarr try to control the floor together. So,
yeah, no, I'm with that. Okay. Question 3. Who is the most polarizing player in the 2024 NBA draft class?
Oh, I thought you skipped a question on me and I was about to get really upset. Like my OCD was really freaking out because I scrolled too far on the outline. I thought we were on the next one. So, yeah,
No.
that was my fault. My bad. I'm going to start with this one. And this is just an interesting, and I kind of went with this as where I think people are going to end up. Like maybe not necessarily right now, but, and I put a big list. You will have better perspective on this than me. I'm fascinated to see whenever people really get into this, like we're sickos, as somebody just said, we've been doing this all the time and all the people, what are the NBL guys going to Like, what are their stocks going to be? Like, are people going to question Alex Sarr because of the minutes played? Are they going to question Bobby Klintman in the first round because of minutes played? Alex Tui, I think, is in my second round at least. I think he probably is in yours. Are people going to question how good he is? It's not like, I know guys have come from the NBL, Sam, but not in the way this draft is going to produce guys, at least not to my recollection.
Yep.
And so I'm interested to see, kind of like how OTE got crushed last year. Now it's completely different context. Like, don't get me wrong, but just because it's new, are people going to question this a little bit? And will that make their guys polarizing?
So the thing about the NBL is like, it's not even as new as the Ignite.
Yeah.
Like, we can go back and we can look at Josh Giddey, LaMelo Ball, RJ Hampton if we want to go like on the downside.
That's
like
true.
Terry Armstrong is a good example, right? Like a guy that was like a 6'6" super athlete wing and like it just didn't work, right? So we have like a good blend of names, I think is the way to put it, right? Like we have a good group of, we know what certain things look like in the NBL. We know what they don't look like. If it's not going to work, we kind of know what that looks like. I think Klintman is a good name though, because I don't know what NBA teams are going to do with Klintman, and I don't know what teams are going to do with like AJ Johnson. It's going to be fascinating to look at those guys particularly. I think that both of those guys could go, 20 to 30, and I think that both those guys could go like 40 or something like that. I don't know. Like AJ Johnson like could go undrafted for all I know. Like he's going to be like entirely dependent on pre-draft workouts. His choice will be fascinating coming up here. I think that he needs another year before declaring, if I'm being completely transparent. Be it maybe you go to the Ignite, maybe you stay in Illawarra, maybe you do something else. Like I think that it'd be valuable for him to take another year just physically. I think AJ Johnson has a ton of talent. The more I watch him, ton of juice athletically, plays hard. Everybody out here will tell you like awesome kid, like really, really, really great kid. It's just going to take a minute for him. Physically, he's not there yet. Bobby Klintman is different because Bobby is a little bit older. Has produced more this year for sure. I'm intrigued to see what NBA teams do. I think he's a really good name for this. Realistically, there are two guys for this for me. The first one is Reed Shepherd.
You think he's polarizing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
For NBA teams, yes.
Okay.
I have this. I still have these conversations.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And by the way, like polarizing to me is like I would expect Reed Shepherd will go somewhere in the top 15.
Oh, so that's what I say. What are the ends of the poll? Like, I mean,
like number 3 to 15.
Okay, so the other end, we're not talking people saying he's not a first round pick polarizing.
No.
We're saying,
but there's a big difference between number 3 and number 15.
Yeah. I just wanted to get a little bit of context. Okay.
Yeah. So like when you talk to teams and executives within teams that value production and like stats and models and things like that, they love Reed. Because of course they do. Reed Shepherd is averaging 0.7 blocks per game as a guy that's like 6'2", let's call him.
He's a really good guard jump shoot contester. Like I know that sounds really nuanced and maybe silly, but he can test jump shots
unbelievable
extremely well.
He is unbelievable technically defensively. Like he is like, let's just call it what it is. He's like a 6'2" white kid who has no length. His ability to close out, stay on balance, cut off drives, get lateral, still contest jump shots, unbelievable. Great at the point of attack defensively, pesty, frustrating. Like I don't even know if I'd call him like physical, but like really, really annoying and pesty. His hand-eye coordination is unbelievable.
He has amazing
hand-eye coordination is incredible every time you watch it. He gets his hands on the ball. He's disruptive. He's disruptive in screens. Like he's disruptive kind of all over the place. Offensively, Reed Shepherd is still shooting over 50% from 3 right now. Like he's at 54.2% from three. He's at 54.4% from the field, shooting 80% from the line. He's averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists in 27 minutes per game with the 2.4 steals, with the 0.8 blocks, only 1.6 turnovers per game. You watch him, he just completely like dictates things when he's out there, even though he's like, no, like Rob Dillingham does as well. Like Rob Dillingham, when he wants to push the ball, like he's going to go, right? But Reed also likes to push the ball. But whereas Rob does it, handling the ball and going end to end with the ball himself, Reed is one of the best headman passers I've ever seen.
Awesome in transition, getting the ball out. Yep, absolutely.
Point blank, unbelievable at it. He, I think, has a little bit more juice athletically than what people give him credit for. Like, I think there's like a little bit, he's not overly quick. He's not overly fast or anything. I think there's like a little bit more suddenness in what he does than what people expect. Maybe I don't know how to explain it.
Well, the thing is, what he's going to be able to do, and you alluded to this earlier, he shoots the ball so well, he's going to get hard closeouts. He can obviously attack a closeout. And then if somebody comes to cut him off, it's not going to be flashy. It may not even be crazy creative, but I think he has the suddenness or the change of pace and change of direction to put one change of direction move on with a crossover between the legs, spin, whatever it is, and continue to get downhill all the way to the rim. Or I think it was the game last night, he hit a really nice mid-range pull-up. Like it was a beautiful shot where he really elevated and knocked down the shot. And so I think I would assume, do you get much pushback on the impact defensively, or is it more like we're not really sure what he is offensively in terms of how much can he do on the ball? Yeah, how much can he? And I will say some of the transition passing, and again, I know this is nuanced stuff. It's not just kicking it ahead. I love when guys, we call it cut the floor. So they pass from one side of the floor to the other. And it's crazy the pickle that puts the defense in, because in defensive transition, you're looking one way, you're trying to match. And whenever the ball goes to the opposite side of the floor, now the defense has to completely change, cutters, all of that stuff. And so I think he's really, really good in those situations. I mean, even if he just quote unquote is a shooter, if he shoots like this, that's super impactful offensively. But I think he has enough on-ball juice, passing, those type of things to, I don't think he's like a true point, but he can definitely operate a ball screen and make passes, keep the flow of the offense going.
Yeah. The questions I get about Reed are, what is the role? Like truly, it's like, it's all surrounding what is the role? Is he good enough on defense to where, like, if he gets matched up in a playoff series against a team that has Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, let's say, right? Can he manage those mismatches at a reasonable level? Can he manage a LeBron mismatch at a reasonable level? Can he manage a Luka mismatch at a reasonable level? Things like that, right? Offensively, is he a point guard? Is he an off-ball guard? He's an off-ball guard. He's 6'2", let's call it. How valuable is that? Still probably pretty fucking valuable, given that he is a elite level shooter who makes 50% of his threes and just consistently knocks down everything. And like, here's the thing, it's not just like off the catch, he makes them off of pull-ups. Like Reed Shepherd this season on pull-up shots out of ball screens right now, he is 8 for 14 shooting 57%. In spot up situations, he's 57% on 49 attempts. In threes off of handoffs, so sometimes those are pull-ups, sometimes they aren't, 4 for 9, 44% from three. Like, he makes them in every situation is the thing. So yeah, I just think he is so impactful across the board in this class, given the way that we have seen guys exceed their value skill wise recently, like exceed what people think the ceiling is, quote unquote, on skill guys. Jalen Brunson, Austin Reeves, Desmond Bane, for instance, I think is a good example of this, even though Bane is a little bit bigger. All of these guys are different than Reed. I'm just saying, like, guys that are skilled in some way, like quote unquote physically deficient in traditional NBA terms, Jaime Jaquez, etc. Like, being this skilled gives you a high ceiling. Like the ceiling here is like something in the ballpark of not Steve Nash, but like something lower than like Steve Nash, I think. If
Well,
it all hits, like it's high.
And that's what, like, at some point, shooting over 50% from 3 on February 1st has to matter. And the thing is, we're
Can we,
not sitting here going, "It's only
Bryce,
that."
can we just pause on that? It's February 1st. Reed Shepherd is shooting 54% from 3 right now.
So here's the
On
thing.
February 1st.
So when you moved Reed where you did on your board, I'll be honest, I was talking to somebody else. I'm like, yeah, let's see where everybody has Reed Shepherd when he isn't shooting 50% from 3 anymore. And the problem is it's not going to happen because he's such a good shooter that he's going to stay this high. Like, he's proven this is a large sample size of a college basketball season at high level. But my point was, okay, let's say he goes to 45%, Sam. We're not making this argument solely based on him being a 50% three-point shooter. The argument goes beyond that. He's a high field guy. He's a great transition passer. He can operate a ball screen, and he plays defense. He has some of the best hands you will see in college basketball in terms of digging and ripping and all of that stuff. And that's so valuable in the NBA, along with the contesting jump shot. So, like, a guy that I'm a little higher on than most that we probably won't talk about is Wooga Poplar at Miami. And part of it was like, he's shooting 50% from 3. The dude can shoot. But I've known that if that doesn't continue to track, because I think he's down to 45% now, I'm going to have to move him down my board. I don't think that's the case with Reed because he does so many other things very well also. And the one negative is, hey, he's only 6'2". I wish I could find the stat I looked up a few months ago. Remember I texted you about the number of players that had played so many minutes under 6'3" in the NBA recently, and it was way more than both of you and I would have guessed. So I know we're talking about a guy in the top 10, and so you want him to be more than like a 15-minute a night guy, but this dude's an elite shooter, and that's what it takes whenever you're that size.
Yeah, I have Reed like somewhere like 3 or 4 on my board. Like
he's at 8 for me right now. So
he's a stud. Like he's a total stud. Reed Shepherd could miss his next 17 3-point attempts. Reed Shepherd could miss his next 17 3-point attempts, and he'd still be shooting 45% from 3.
That's silly.
It's silly. Like, that's how good Reed is. And look, like, you know, Basketball Genesis brings up like Rob Dillingham. I think Rob Dillingham's great. I have a top 10 grade on Rob Dillingham too. Like, to be clear, I think he's been fantastic this season. I think he's like a little bit more questionable in terms of like, if it doesn't work with his frame in the NBA, where else does he impact the game other than on offense? Reed, I feel confident, will impact the game. Rob, I think his passing has been like a little bit worse recently, a little bit more inconsistent, maybe is the way to put it. Recently, we will see.
Who's your other
other
one,
two guys? Yeah, the other two guys I want to bring up are Modest Pizelis and Dijon Saloon. Okay. Modest is just all over the place when you talk to people. Like, there are people who like don't think he's worth a lottery pick that I've talked to in front offices, and then there are people who think he's like a top 5 guy because of some of the stuff they saw at youth levels in terms of like shot creation and being able to create you know, in transition and semi-transition and things like that. So yeah, I don't know what to do with Modest yet. I think I need to do a bit of a deeper look.
And the thing, he's not shooting well from 3 right now. Like, that's the part that's starting to worry me is, okay, it's one thing when he, you know, is just getting back. And I don't think I have the numbers here handy, but it's like every game I watch, I think I'm a little more impressed with the off the bounce stuff than what I thought it was going to be. But the 3-point shooting hasn't been there. And I feel like he kind of needs both. And he does some nice things off the ball defensively, but on the ball defensively, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. So I really wanted that all around offensive game to have him as like a top 10 guy where he can shoot it, but he can also put it on the ground and pass and do some of those things.
I've been like kind of wondering, is there a world where he's like a great backup center?
Matas?
Yeah.
Is he physical like enough to do that though?
Weak side? No, but like backup center, I think that the level is like a little bit harder or not as high in terms of like physicality. Um, look, I'm not saying that I think this is like a great idea. I was talking to John Hollinger. John brought this up to me. I'm gonna credit John as like a potential outcome here. Uh, I think he probably can't do it, but
So
the
what's
game
the
translates a
idea?
little bit better there. Like pick it, like don't worry about him on the ball. Just worry about like
Okay.
being able to be like a floor spacing big off the ball who's like a good weak side rim protector. And you play him like with somebody that is like a little bit more physical at the four kind of thing.
So I can buy into Matas being a long-term four because I do believe in his low man ability in that situation. So,
Yeah.
like in the right, if you wanted to call him a big and you play him with a certain type of other big, yeah, I can see that more than I think coming into the year, there was like this wing creator type of idea around him that
We haven't
doesn't
seen any of that.
we haven't seen
Yeah.
that. And I remember the reason I always pay attention to the shooting is he had a big rep for that. And I remember pulling the numbers of his versus Grady Dick because they both played at Sunrise. And it wasn't close in terms of like volume. The
Yeah.
percentages weren't crazy off, but the volume wasn't even close. I'm like, are we talking about this guy in a little bit too high regard? And at that time, we didn't know who the elite shooters were going to be. We didn't know we
Yeah.
were going to have Reed Shepard and some of these other guys. And so we were talking about him as one of the best shooters in the class. But I like that. Like at the four now, some of those ancillary skills make more sense. Defensively, you're not worried about him staying in front of Jason Tatum's of the world and those guys. So the idea of him as a big, I guess I could get behind a little bit.
Yeah. So like comparing him to like somebody like Johnny Furphy, right? They're basically like the same size, right? They're 6'9". Don't think Furphy has crazy length, great athletes, right? Like I've been like really trying to decide like, do I like Furphy more? Because I know Furphy can shoot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like Furphy will knock down shots at a high level. Modest hasn't been consistent enough yet in that regard. Uh, I'm interested to see where I kind of come down on that because I'm still getting a gauge on Furphy, and we'll talk about Furphy here momentarily. But
Yeah.
like that's a name, and like Tidjon Saloon, like another 6'9", 7-foot wingspanish kind of guy who people are excited about. I'm less enthused about him as well. When I watch him, like I just don't see the feel yet. He is one of the younger players in the class, but like the idea is 6'9", athletic French kid who can knock down threes, kind of block shots, I guess, on defense and maybe be switchable. But like I just I haven't seen enough of like the ancillary skills yet with him.
So, Saloon will play summer league as an 18-year-old. So he doesn't turn
Yeah.
19 till it's just I always like to give that. I know some people don't care about age. Some people do. I think it's meaningful, and in the same way that the number of years you've played college basketball is meaningful, or all of that different thing.
Yep.
He can really get out and transition. I think he's an impactful transition guy where the other team is going to have to know where he's at. He's flashed some ability to attack closeouts. He's a true off the ball player. Like that's what he is. He not a lot of
Yep.
on ball creation. I think what stood out for me defensively with him, he is very intense, and I do think he has good awareness and like understanding rotations and those type of things on the defensive end. I think that was really impressive to me as an 18-year-old kid playing in the professional league that he was able to show those types of understanding and awareness on defense.
Yeah. 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 That's not unfair. I think. I just, what does he do with the ball?
Sure.
Like, I think he's a good enough shooter
It's
to
a little
be able to.
mechanical, but it's solid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no. When I've watched him, I've come away more underwhelmed than where like others seem to think he is right now. He's like not a top 20 guy for me right now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
that feels a bit aggressive, but yeah. Okay. Question number 4. How will the 2024 NBA draft impact the 2024 NBA trade deadline? The first thing that I think is just worth saying, like, is teams just have questions on the top of this draft, but also who are the guys that are actually going to be in this class, right? So like Basketball Genesis brings up KJ Evans at Oregon, 6'9", kind of like big wing forward kind of guy who this year I've really liked his defensive energy and I've loved his rebounding, but offensively, like it's going to take some time for KJ Evans. Is he in this draft? Is he not in this draft? Is Jackson Shelstead from Oregon in this draft? Is there are a number of different guys you can point to. Like, is Johnny Furphy going to be in this draft? Is like does Ethan Almanza, like who played great last night, but like is he going to be a guy that decides to try and run it back and go next year? Like given that he's been a little bit hit or miss this year. Alex Tui, does he try to run it back next year? Justin Edwards at Kentucky, like what does he do? There are just so many dudes where there's like a big flashing red question mark on are they even going to be in this draft class? And if they aren't, do you want to pick them? So I think that's going to lead to teams being much more willing to move 2024 picks in this upcoming deadline than what we've seen previously.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that was one of my points that I put down was I feel like people are going to be willing to trade off their 2024 picks. But the other thing is, like, if we're talking about this draft not being good and these picks not being valuable, then, who wants them? How many teams are going to acquire, how much value do you get for them? Or are you better off just keeping it and, seeing if you can, like, this will be really interesting. I think this will be a class that will really stand out in terms of what NBA teams are the best at evaluating prospects, because we can sit here and I see people saying like this is a class full of role players and all that. And maybe it is. Maybe there ends up being no star, no first, no all NBA, whatever. But the inkling, like I feel like somebody's going to come. There's somebody in here. And so we're going to find out who's able to identify that player or those players, along with the ones that fit their team the best. I think the other thing is, I wonder how much teams at the deadline that would normally sell off all their vets, like, hey, we want to win this tank race down the stretch, so we need to get rid of whatever player that may help us win games. There's no need to do that, right? Like, there's no need to fully tank so you have the best odds. I mean, they're flattened a little bit anyway, but on top of it, it's not Victor there setting for you. It's not Cade Cunningham setting there for you. So if you're not going to get what you want for a veteran or whatever, unless it's just solely salary cap situations, why sell them off? Like the Pistons, like with Bojan Bogdanovic, like if you're not going to get what you want, like, and you think he can help you win some games and grow something out, maybe you just keep him and then you could.
Well, so that's another thing I wanted to go to. Like these guys like Bojan Bogdanovic, Bruce Brown, where you have options on them, right? You have like contractual control over them for next season. Bojan, I think particularly is like a very good example of this. If you just rather have a 2025 pick than a 2024 pick, you probably just wait till the summer and be like, hey, let's extend this out and then we'll move him for a first in the summer and the fall, right?
Yep. Yeah, he's always the one I bring up, obviously because of Detroit, but because for anybody that doesn't know, he has only $2 million guaranteed on next year's contract, and it's $20 million roughly if they, fully guarantee it. But yeah, like if the Pistons, who we all know have like 6 wins right now, if you want to try to win some games after the deadline, having Bojan is probably better than not having Bojan. And so you keep him around. And like you said, that's a great example of then you go get a 2025 pick or a 2026 pick instead of a 2024 pick that you're not that excited about. So I'm just interested to see if we see less of those vets and those situations on bad teams, or what picks they end up getting, right? Like how much can they get? Can you get Bojan for a 2026 pick now? How much are these other teams, these contenders, what are they going to do with their 2024 pick or want to sell off their future picks?
Yep. I think that's right. Like I'm going to be really interested. I think there's a good shot. This is like a more quiet-ish deadline, especially that Siakam and Anunoby have already been moved. I'm kind of leaning toward it being like a little bit more low key than what we've seen recently.
Well, you said the other day when we were recording, like, man, it seemed like the deadline was so close or so far away, and then it snuck up on us all of a sudden. I think it's because trades started happening earlier than what we normally see, or maybe
Yeah.
not earlier, but we've seen 2 or 3 actual moves. And so we feel like we've already been
Big
getting some
ones.
of this. Yeah, some
Yeah.
big names, some legit trades, not the Marvin Bagley to the Washington Wizards one. And so I think we've already seen this. And so it seems like it's been going on for a while. And even sitting here today, it's like, man, we still have a week to go before we get to the deadline. But it will be interesting because DeJounte is the biggest name that we talked about on the last episode. So if you're here and you didn't listen to the last episode, we did a full trade deadline primer a few days ago. So make sure you check that out as well.
All right, Bryce, ask me question number 5, because I feel like this is one that's probably more my wheelhouse than yours, given
Yeah,
just like the intel side.
yeah, absolutely. And I only have notes on a couple of these guys, a little in depth. But Sam, what or who are the prospect names that you're getting the most questions about? Like, who are the guys that people want to know? Is this guy staying in? Where's his stock?
Yeah.
All of those type of things.
Yeah. So like when I talk to NBA teams, the 3 guys that they're trying, like that I get the most about are, let's kind of just go in order here. Uh, I would say first would be Keyshawn George at Miami. Keyshawn George is like this big 6'8" wing from Switzerland who can really shoot it. He's been really, really good recently for Miami. Uh, I think there's like a fairly real chance that he's a one and done. The numbers aren't amazing, but if you look basically from the time of the Stonehill game, which was their first game before Christmas, uh, or their last game before Christmas. I'm sorry. Keyshawn George is a 6'8" wing that is averaging 10 points per game in that time, 4.4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, versus only 2.2 turnovers, 60% true shooting percentage, only 43.8 from the field because he's just like not, he just doesn't really drive all that often. Like mostly everything is like a 3-point shot. He's making 39% of his 6.3 3-point attempts since that game before Christmas. Teams are really interested in this idea of like big 6'8" shooter with some ball skill and with some passing ability. In a year where teams are trying to figure out like, hey, is this the season to like try and quote unquote pre-draft somebody? Like that's always been the term. Is Keyshawn George a guy that we can look at as like a good opportunity that likely would be like a top 20 pick next year? Maybe we can get him at like 25 or so.
Yeah, I mean, when you watch a Miami game, he really stands out. Like the way he moves, the
Yeah.
fluidity, and just the skill level. I'm interested to see. I've referenced it a couple times. We do still have a month left of the regular season, March Madness, all of that stuff, conference tournament. I'm not saying we can throw all of our stock. Like we can't go overboard over a month and a half, but it seems like his minutes are going to continue to increase. And my feeling is 2 weeks from now, even we're going to have a lot more data or better data even on Keyshawn George, kind of what he is right now and how close he is if a team did want to try to quote unquote pre-draft.
The second name is Johnny Furphy at Kansas, which shouldn't come as a surprise. It was really funny. Like it took me a minute to catch up on Furphy because I did a Kansas like tape rewatch, like a dive into them literally probably 6 days before he like entered their rotation full time and like, entered the starting lineup and was playing like crazy minutes. Right. In his last 5 games, Johnny Furphy is averaging 15.4 points, 7.4 rebounds, shooting 61, 52, 74 from the field. He has been elite for Kansas. Like Johnny Furphy has been, this is like one of the best 6-game stretches that any freshman has had this season, point blank, period. And on top of it, Johnny Furphy is a 6'9", like real athlete. He is a dude who can get out in the open court, who has a chance to like really be able to attack off the bounce and drive and finish at the rim. And on top of it, can really, really shoot it. Like I believe in the shot, like at a real level. Being as big as he is, being as skilled as he is, Furphy is a guy that like, if this continues here and he averages like double figures the rest of the year, I would expect that he would be a one and done.
Yeah, and he's a guy again that's going to get more and more opportunity because, unfortunately, like El Marco Jackson hasn't come into Kansas and played at the level a lot of people thought he would. And so I think he's going to get a chance now on this KU team who can really use somebody like him. Dickinson runs the show, and Kev, McCuller, those guys are really kind of at the top offensively, but they could use a guy that can score. So I think he's going to get the offensive chances, obviously playing on the big stage. I know this may be a shock to some people based on where I live. Of the three names we're going to talk about, Furphy's probably the one I've watched the least. Like, I don't watch every Kansas game. So, it's not something, he's actually a guy that I'm a little bit late on right here. I've watched bits and pieces, but I don't have like my super deep notes on him. So I'm definitely going to have to watch a Kansas game super in depth coming up to get a better feel for how I feel about him as a prospect.
Yeah. So the big thing for him is the defense is really bad. Like it's really rough right now. He has the tools, and honestly, like I think off the ball, he knows where to be, and like his anticipation, his understanding of like there was this play against Cincinnati where his man like kind of runs through the play, and they run a pick and roll, making him essentially the low man, like weak side defender. And the way that he kind of understood what was going on, assessed and processed the situation, and then stayed in the lane, waited, went up and just like blocked the shot as a tagger on Aziz Bondiago, who's like a big dude, like 6'9", all sorts of length, real athlete. I was really, really impressed with like not just the fact that he blocked the shot, but the anticipation, the willingness to get there early, and the ability to like really, really be there for that moment. I that's the stuff that's positive. He has maybe the worst like closeout technique of any player in this draft class right now. And he gets like weirdly high with his front foot and gets like really hoppy on defense. It's but he wants to defend. Like I think that stuff's like all mechanical, and like you can figure that out kind of, especially when he's as big as he is and as long as he is. But yeah, his ceiling is very high in this draft. If you told me Johnny Furphy goes in the lottery, like I would completely buy that right now.
Well, and that's what it'll be really interesting again to see, if teams don't believe in some of these guys as players right now, maybe this is the year that we see the Johnny Furphys and the Keyshawn George and those type of, AJ Johnson that we brought up earlier, that's a guy you and I have talked about in terms of you can just see the juice that kid has. And so maybe it's a year where they do quote unquote take a chance on some of these guys. Maybe it's a year early, but you get them in with you and you feel better about taking a shot in the 2024 draft compared to any other draft, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm going to get a quality player to help me right now. Let me take a swing on a guy a year early and develop him in the G League, wherever you need to. And then we kind of hit the lottery with that.
The third guy here is Hansen Yang. NBA teams are just trying to learn more about him as much as anything. They not as many teams have been out to see him as like have been to Australia. Just a very strange situation for a number of reasons that like I'm probably not going to talk about totally. Because I don't know all of the details on like everything surrounding Yang yet. Not in a bad way or anything, just like trying to understand the situation much like NBA teams are, and we're all in this together trying to figure this out. But Hansen Yang is playing for Qingdao, I believe, in China. In the CBA, he's averaging 15 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists per game. And anybody that has watched Hansen Yang play knows that like he is this incredibly creative big at 7'1" who can really pass, who has this like great touch around the basket, has some potential to shoot it. Just this really skilled 7'1" big. You just love to watch him play. Like he's had like multiple like 7 assist games this year. Like it can really, really think the game at a high level. He's hitting backdoor cutters at the high post. Like if you post him, he's hitting kickouts. Like he's just really smart in terms of the way he sees the court. Now, the question is, he is just really not a great athlete in terms of his movement skill. Can he improve enough to get to like a level that allows him to take advantage of his athleticism or his skill level in the NBA? Does his athleticism get to a commensurate level? I am I am really intrigued with him, and from the tape I've watched, I've probably watched now like 5 or 6 games. I do think he's a first round potential prospect, like for sure. And in my big board that will be coming after the deadline, I will have him as a first rounder.
Yeah, I have him in my first round after talking to you and some because I watched him and I was like, man, this is really intriguing. But I think I told you, like, I'm still trying to grasp some of the perspective on these different leagues, right? Like,
Yeah,
and so the CBA wasn't something that I had, really scouted before, and so I needed to, get some feel on, okay, what am I watching here? What is the competition? What translates? What doesn't? But man, you can't doubt the passing. It's so much fun. It's a lot of fun. And just to speak a little bit more on how this is like NBA draft media wise, and I won't call out the person, but I text somebody that's very prominent, and I was like, "Hey, have you watched this guy?" And he wasn't even familiar with the name, and so that's where it's like kind
yeah,
of just coming around right now, and we see this every year. Bilal wasn't a guy we probably would have been talking about. I mean, maybe by February 1st last year, but like he was playing on not on the same team, but in the same program as Victor. And so these guys come out around this time of the year, but he's super intriguing. I'm trying to be careful on like, okay, guys like him who are really good passers. What does that mean? Like I
yeah,
don't want to fall in because I love guys that can really pass, but I don't want to fall in love with them too much because if he
yeah,
can't do the other stuff, the passing may not matter. And so
yeah.
I'm trying to like keep myself in check there and not fall in love with it too much. I need to dive into some more film, but I've watched a few games as well, and he is very intriguing.
I think he's really, really interesting. When you watch the tape, it's just like, man, like this is kind of different. Like it kind of pops. And look, like the numbers that you see in like the Chinese league are wild, right? Like Antonio Blakeney right now is averaging 30 points per game. Alpha Kaba, the kid that was drafted by the Hawks like 8 years ago, is averaging 13 rebounds. K Felder is averaging 10 assists per game. Alexei Shved's averaging 10 assists per game, right? Like the numbers here are off or like kind of wild, right? Having said that, like Hansen Yang is a teenager who's averaging the fourth most rebounds in the league, second most blocks per game in the league, and is a very real like passer, playmaker, decision maker who can really just find open guys. So
Can I
I like Yang quite a bit.
just real quick? And I do think his size, as most would imagine, does just deter shots and stuff like that. So like there is some stuff there defensively. The other thing that stood out to me, and maybe I'm too hard on Donovan Clingan with this, but one thing I wanted to see from Clingan was like him play a stretch of minutes at one time. Like, can he go play 10? He's playing 34 minutes a night
Yeah.
in this league, and he played the entire first quarter of the game I watched. And so I'm not trying to like throw a stray at Clingan here, but it always stands out to me when guys with this size are able to play that amount of minutes in a row. Like that stood out to me for an 18-year-old playing in a pro league, just the ability to play that many minutes on a nightly basis and that many minutes in a row.
No, I don't think that's unfair to point out at all. Um, those are the three I would say that I'm kind of getting the most questions on from teams. Like, hey, like, what do you think of this guy? What do you think of that guy? Like, kind of thing. Um, so shout out Darren Flowers. It does look like his super chat did come through, according to my producer Dave. His question was, does the San Antonio Spurs trading for DeJounte Murray make any sense? We'll take a quick little interlude. We kind of talked about that on the last episode. I don't think it does. I think that they should be like looking for like a bigger, like a better guard than DeJounte. I like DeJounte, but like I would want somebody, if I was them, like I'd be like hoarding my assets to like try to move for Trae Young at some point or somebody like that, like a really dynamic, like creative guard as opposed to DeJounte. Uh, I wouldn't, I don't love the idea of DeJounte there, to be honest.
Yeah, like this isn't one of those like this is the move that then sets you up for the next move, right? Like you already have Victor, like you just need to go make the next move. I mean, I guess you still could, but you kind of
Yeah,
alluded
you
to this
could, but
earlier.
like, yeah,
Where And I don't know that you're in a huge rush just yet either. So you don't have to you don't have to go crazy for it. Again, it would be interesting. I said this about DeJounte for the Nets is I would be interested just for DeJounte Murray to see him on a team where he can really have the ball and he's the guy in terms of that, in
Yeah.
terms of having the ball in his hands. How good can he be? Just because I'm always intrigued is what is the ceiling for some of these guys? And, he's been playing next to Trey, where obviously he doesn't get to do that. Even the Lakers, where we've talked about DeJounte being a good fit and those type of things. Well, he's still playing next to LeBron and AD, and even Austin Reeves would take the ball at times. I would, for the sake of DeJounte, be interested to see him play next to or be able to play on the ball so much like that. And then especially when you have someone that has the gravity like Victor Wembanyama. Oh,
Okay. Question number 6. Everybody needs a smile. Actually, just asked something very similar to this in the chat.
yeah, I saw that. That was
What
perfect.
kind of depth does the 2024 NBA draft have? Everybody needs a smile, or everyone needs a smile asked. So is this draft primarily weak at the top, or is the general level of player weak all the way through? Yeah, what do you think of the depth of this class, Bryce? It's a question that I think a lot of people are asking, and I kind of just alluded to it a little bit when discussing, like, teams are still trying to figure out who's going to be in this draft, but looking through, like, how do you feel about the depth of it?
Yeah, so that's what I said too. Some of it could fall off based off pre-draft decisions, right? Like who's going to stay in, who's going to stay out. I'm super fascinated by those decisions because I felt like we saw some guys in the 2023 draft hearing, hey, the 2024 draft is weak. I'm going to go back to school and then
Yeah.
or wherever, and then I'm going to enter the 2024 draft that's not very good. Well, I don't know what people think about the depth of the 2025 draft, but I know it's going to be talked about way more positively than what this 2024 draft is. So does that quote unquote scare people into the draft where I think last year it's, this excited them to be in this one. So that will be something that I tend, and I don't know, like I really need to crunch the numbers on how many big guys get selected in the first round or in the top 45 and those things. I tend to think that there's some big men depth or big man depth in the draft,
Yeah.
but it may not be as deep as I think in terms of maybe it's not as many as what I feel like, but there's some guys that I like whenever you get to the end of the first round, even a few guys in the second round or what I have in the second round right now. So I think you can get some quality centers or big men, not star level, maybe not even starters, but I think there's quite a few like potential backup fives, big men in this draft.
Yeah, so I actually agree with you. Like, I think that the bigs is probably where the depth is. Like, you can look at somebody like Oso Iguodaro. Like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have Oso Iguodaro as a first round pick. He's
Same.
been awesome recently. He has
Really good
been
recently. Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. Like, I think Oso is gonna go in the first round. That's kind of where I'm at. But then you kind of look through, and it was like, okay, Yves Missy, I think he'll go in the first round. Deron Holmes, I think he has a shot to go in the first round if he's in this draft, right? Then we start to get into like is this guy going to be in this draft group? Ethan Almanza, like, is he going to be in the draft? Honestly, like, I'm not totally sure what the answer to that is. Like, I truly don't know. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Maybe he goes for it. Adem Bona, is he going to be in the draft? We'll see, right? UCLA season has not gone to plan, and I feel like it has not been as positive for him throughout that kind of late run here, or like middle season run, as it was early in the season. Like, from December 9th to January 11th, they went 1-8, and he averaged like 10 points and 7 rebounds and shot 57% from the field. He's been a little bit better recently. Like, he had a great game against Washington as they've won like 3 of 4 here. But what is a Dembona? I think people are still trying to figure it out. I'm at the point now where I have like Deron Holmes ahead of a Dembona on my board.
I do as well.
Yeah.
Deron Holmes has been, if like, just go to B-ball reference, and I think it's stop at the Grambling game, start after that one, and just see what he's done over the last month or so. he's averaging like 23 points, almost 10 rebounds, shooting over 40% from three, not turning it over, and then blocking shots and all the other stuff as well, or
Yep.
turn on a game. Because I think what some people are missing is DeRon Holmes' game is a little bit different this year than it was last year. Like, he's truly shooting threes. He's able to put it on the deck. I understand there's some other concerns. I'm not saying he's perfect, but there's been a real flip that's been switched over the last month, 6 weeks. And he's a real dude if he can continue to do it for the rest of the season.
Over his last 12 games, DeRon Holmes is averaging 22 points, 9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 2.3 blocks, shooting 58% from the field, 42% from three on 3.3 3-point attempts per game. Has been outstanding. He's been a first round pick over the course of that stretch. And I think he has a good shot to go in the first round if he ends up continuing down this road.
PJ Hall, what about him?
I really like PJ Hall quite a bit. I think like top 40-ish kind of guy for me.
That's right.
Khalil Ware had a really good game earlier this week. I'm not quite as high on Khalil Ware, just in terms of like the way that his game like will kind of functionally work in the NBA, but has real ceiling for sure. Like that could bring it all together. I think he's been better at Indiana than what I expected this year. And then you get into like some other names like I like Quentin Post. It's like a awesome, movement shooter kind of guy.
I didn't realize again until I was doing some of this how old he is, but like he can space the floor and he's big. Like there's some real intrigue, whether it's the end of the second round or even as an undrafted free agent guy. But I mean, NBA teams are going to have some intrigue with this kid.
100%. Ryan Kalkbrenner is a guy that may or may not be in this class. Like we'll see. He still has another year. Interesting player. Ariel Hookporty, a guy that will be in this class who has been outstanding this year for Melbourne United. Like truly has been awesome. I think he will get picked somewhere in the last 15 picks. Coleman Hawkins, I think, is a name.
Yeah. What do you think about Aziz from Cincinnati?
Interesting, tough physical rim protector, at least. I like that.
He's got some juice
ranked
too.
him in my top 100 for sure. Brandon Carlson at Utah has been really, really good. Like there are a lot of like guys in the 6'10" to 7 foot wings, 7 foot range that teams really need backup centers. And I think that like, because the center market is more financially valuable in college right now due to the NIL market and due to like the way that NBA teams like kind of value, kind of don't bigs right now. I think there's like a lot of space for some of these guys to like enter the backup center conversation in a real way.
And the Kentucky guys, right? Like, I don't know. I haven't seen enough of Big Z, especially, and even Bradshaw. Like, I'm still not sure where I land, but those guys are going to be in the mix. Like, there's going to be conversation around those guys.
Yeah. And that's, again, those are guys where like, are they in this draft or not? Right. Like to me, like I'm not as high on, I've never been as high on Ivicic as other people are. Like, I don't know that I would draft Ivicic personally, maybe in the second round. Like, I guess I probably would like take the flyer in the second round if I could stash him, but like he's got a while to go still, like foul wise. People got real excited off of like a 10-minute stretch in his first game. And you look at the last three and it has not been smooth sailing. And it's been a lot of the problems that he showed in Europe, which I've written about before previously with Kyle Tucker. So, and then like you look at Bradshaw's averaging 6 points, 4 rebounds in, almost 20 minutes a game and, still trying to figure out who he is. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So like if Vecenie could go in the first round, like that's not impossible to me, but he'd need to do what he did in those first 10 minutes more often. I've always been a little bit more skeptical of the whole thing with Vecenie, just in terms of like making it work functionally. I would love to see it though, because that dude's super fun to watch play. Like he is like box office when he's got it going. Other guys that like are interesting depth guys, like you brought up the guards here, like KJ Simpson.
So I was saying like, I just thought like, this isn't necessarily, like, this is a bad answer to it in terms of this isn't true depth, because I don't think you can count it as depth when you get out of like the first 2 rounds. it just seems like I think more for me, it was, I like a lot of these guys. They're probably undrafted free agents. I just wonder like which ones stay in, which ones stick, which ones move up further in the draft. I mean, if there's a place for these guys, there's just a lot of them, but that's probably true for any year. I was just kind of looking for some different, some ways to be a little more creative with the answer, I guess. So
Yeah, no, I like it. Like there are a lot of guys like KJ Simpson at
yeah,
Colorado. The thing that I'm like struggling with Colorado is like, so I do think that Tristan Da Silva and Cody Williams are better prospects than KJ Simpson. KJ
agreed.
Simpson's like super valuable for them. Obviously, he's been fantastic this season. Are we really going to say that like Colorado has 3 draft picks
So,
and is 6-4 in a Pac-12 that's like just fine? You know
so
what I
that
mean?
no,
Like,
that
uh,
I'm questioning myself because I think that every time I try to move KJ Simpson up, and I'm like, I have Cody in my top 4, and I have Tristan in the top 40. And then I also have like, how can I have KJ higher than, like, can I also have him in my top 40? Because I know some people do. I mean, I have him
yeah.
in my top 60 and because he's been really good, but I kind of am the same way. And that's probably a aired way of thinking, but I can't get it out of my head that it's like, do I really think this
So
Colorado team has 3 top 40 guys?
I don't think it is because why would a team not be like winning like crazy if they had that? You know what I mean? And like the rest of the Colorado team's fine. Like let's be clear about that. Like they have Javon Hadley, he's like pretty interesting. Like no,
And
he's an NBA player, but like a good player. They have Eddie Lampkin, who's like
yeah,
a big
Lampkin.
dude.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like uh, I struggle with that a little bit for sure. Because like if you have that many dudes, you should be winning like at a real level. And Colorado's 15-6. Like let's be clear, they're like a borderline like top 25 team. Like they're still quite good. I think there is a chance that like they really turn it on, and it's like, oh no, like all 3 of these guys are real guys. Um, and look, I have KJ Simpson like right around like my top 60 right now. Like I'm
Same.
for it.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, trying to determine all of that. Hunter Salas, Kylan Boswell, Juan Nunez,
Reese
Donovan
Beekman.
Dent, like Reese Beekman, Cam Spencer, Tristan Newton, Keyshawn Gilbert, like all these guys like might not be in the class. Devin Carter like might not be in the or like he might. I think Devin Carter is probably a little bit more likely just given how well he's played. Tyler Kolek like probably a little bit more likely. AJ
Yeah.
Mitchell like who knows. Just kind of like running through like Adama Ball. I think he's more of a guard than a wing, like with just the way he plays, kind of.
Carlisle
Um,
at Stanford.
Cannon Carlisle is a great name. Like I have no idea what Cannon Carlisle is going to be, right? Like truly, I do not know what that guy is going to end up becoming. It's just, yeah, trying to determine all of this is still a little bit in flux, maybe is the way to put it.
So I think that's where I was going with this is I realize these smaller guards aren't in vogue with the NBA. I get it. I understand it. I agree with it. I guess it's me trying to decipher or reconcile some of them are going to get drafted. Who are
Yeah.
they? Like there's just a ton
Yeah.
of names that I'm struggling to figure out how much will they be valued and who are the right ones that are actually going to be valued.
Yeah. And ultimately, like to answer this question and kind of wrap it up so we can move on, where this draft's depth is going to be told is which of these guys is actually in this class,
Yeah.
especially among the freshmen. Like,
Yeah.
is Bub Carrington in this draft class? He had 24 last night, like was quite good
Yeah.
against Wake. They played great, like Pitt won that game. I don't think Bub Carrington should be in this draft. Like, I feel quite strongly that Bub Carrington should go back to school. He needs strength. He needs shooting improvement. They need to like go find spacing around him to like get the most out of his skill set. But like, if he goes into the G League, like there's a real shot that that kid just like gets lost in a way that worries me. Like that's a kid that to me should probably go back. Look, like I don't know what DJ Wagner's plans are. DJ
Sure.
Wagner's been much better recently to the point where like I think that he, is definitely like I have him in the top 40 for sure right now, and like,
Same.
definitely a borderline first round pick. Is he going to be in this class? Is Justin Edwards going to be in this class? Ethan Almanza is that age, right? Like he's, a potential, like we'll see. Alex Tui, is he going to be in this class?
Milan
Uh,
Momcilovic at Iowa State.
that's literally the next guy I was
Oh,
going to say was
my bad.
Milan. Is he going to be in this class? Like there are just so many guys where everything is so wide open. Elliot Cadeau, like North Carolina's been great. Like there's no way that guy should be in this class, but like just you can go through all of these names and there's so many interesting ones. And KJ Evans, like that.
Mackenzie Mbako at Indiana, who was like flashed some stuff here and there, at least enough.
Mm-hmm. Like you can go through all these freshmen and it's just like Jackson Shelstead, like Cannon Carlisle's a great name. Cannon, I've really liked him when I've seen him play. It's just how
Malik
many of them
Lewis
are
is
in?
a guy with the Mexico City Capitans that is a really
Yep.
interesting player.
Yeah, and it's just how many of them are in. Like
Yep.
truly, like I just don't have an answer to that yet. And that will tell the tale of the depth of this class. How many of those guys decide to risk it or just stay in school and get, X number of dollars in NIL,
Yeah.
right? Okay. Transitioning off of that to the older players now. Who are the best immediate impact older prospects in this class?
So I want to start with this one because I saw people asking about him earlier. And so I think people want us to talk about him. I'm going to bring up Dalton Connect. And what I'm interested with Dalton is he's killing. Like he is crushing it at Tennessee offensively, like just
Yep.
scoring the ball like crazy. But the reason I put a little question, and I believe in Dalton, I think he's really, really good, and it's been crazy impressive. He is a guy that went JUCO, Northern Colorado. So while he's older, this is his first year of Power Five, whatever, college basketball. And so I wonder, like, is he going to be able to make a smooth transition into the NBA and the scoring is all going to translate right away? Or does it still take a little bit of time as he makes yet another jump, from this level of basketball to that level? I tend to think the scoring is going to translate. Everybody I've talked to some, people that have, been along in that path. And like they all told me he's been a 3-level scorer his whole life. Like it's always been there. They had no doubt he was going to go into Tennessee and be able to do the same thing. I mean, I think the real question there with Dalton is, defensively, is he going to be able to hold up to be instant impact, from day one when he comes in?
I think Connect is definitely the guy that like kind of lines up for me.
Yeah.
Uh, Great shooter, really knows how to move off the ball. Great finisher, just in terms of like can adjust in midair, real athlete, has craft as a finisher. Um, Plays with more like defensively, like it's a little bit soft, I guess, right? But like plays with like toughness and like aggression and confidence, right? Like he's a guy that's like fearless out there in a
Yeah.
real way when I watch him. Over his last 6 games, do you know what Dalton Connect is averaging?
It's got to be close to 30. I feel like it's been because didn't he go 30-point games in a row? And then I think his last game he was over 30 as well.
So he's averaging 31.8 points on 53, 45, 75, 5.8 rebounds, 2 assists, 32 points over his last 6 games. He's been unbelievable. Look, I had Dalton as a top 20 guy, in the first iteration that I did of the big board. I'll have him, right around the lottery
Yep.
in this next iteration. 6'6" wing who can shoot at an elite level. Those guys are just worth it at the end of the day. You take those guys and be happy with where they're at. Connect, I believe, is one of 2 upperclassmen I have in my top 23 right now. The other one is Jalen Tyson.
Yep. Absolutely.
Jalen Tyson, another highly productive player. Unlike Dalton, not doing it on a great team, but Jalen Tyson averaging 20.6 points, 7.2 rebounds, 3.2 assists on 49, 37, 79 over at Cal. Has just been really good. Has been really, really good throughout the course of the season. He has a 3.2 to 3.3 assist turnover ratio. That is like a concerning little thing there worth noting. Upperclassmen with the questions around decision making is a real concern. But I think that if you watch the tape, a lot of it is like his teammates kind of smoking open looks a little bit.
So that's what I was gonna say. I don't know that I can excuse the turnovers, but I can excuse or talk out the assist to turnover ratio. I mean, you don't turn it over 3.3 times a game just because your teammates aren't the best, or there is some of that, right? Like they're not in the right spot, or they don't see it the way he's supposed, seeing it, those type of things. But I think he creates more than what the raw 3.21 assist numbers would tell you. I think what's kind of sold it for me, Sam, is I watch him play and I love his game. He's strong, like he's really able to take contact, all of those things. And then I started looking at the shooting numbers. I mean, he shot 40% from three last year on 3.5 attempts, and he's shooting 37% from three this year on just under five, a quality, decent free throw shooter as well. I think I buy the shooting more than I did at one point. I don't love the mechanics, but I don't hate the mechanics. And he's doing everything for that team. And so I've really risen on Tyson. I'll tell you, I shared my big board with some people the other day, and that was a guy I actually got a lot of pushback that I had too high. A lot of people were like, "Oh, no, you're too high on Jalen Tyson." I'm like, okay, I'm willing to be wrong on this one. Like there's some that's like, okay, that makes sense. Maybe I need to, cool my jets a little bit. I think I'm cool with where I'm at with Jalen Tyson. And if I end up being wrong, then I'll learn from it. But there's some guys I'm willing to be wrong about. And I think he's going to be one of them.
Yeah, no, I'm with it. I like Jalen Tyson. The other upperclassmen that I want to talk about, there are two others. Like we should talk about Kevin McCullough. Kevin McCullough has been outstanding the entire season at Kansas. Just wildly consistent, averaging 20.6 rebounds, 5 assists, 47, 36, 82 in terms of his shooting splits. Look, Kevin McCullough, if he's a shooter, like if the 36 number from 3 is real, okay, then we're cooking with gas because he can do everything else. He's a good defender. I don't think he's like an all defense level defender, which like he's gotten kind of accoladed like that. Like he has that potential. I think he's like a really good, like positive plus defender. I don't love the jumper still, if I'm being honest, but like it's very clear he has touch, which like you kind of want to buy into a little bit. But then like you look over his last 8 games and he's shooting 29% from 3 again in that little stretch. He's been good like in those games. Like I don't mean to like, call it out, but like the efficiency has been a little bit worse and like been more toward what we've seen recently. Also, like, Jeffrey Chan like brings up McCullough has been hurt recently.
He didn't
That's
play in
kind
the
of a
last
thing.
game, right?
Yeah, like it's kind of a thing for him where like the injuries come up. I believe in him just like a little bit less than some of these other guys, I guess is where
So
I'm at.
he's been incredible. There's no denying it.
He's been unbelievable. Yeah.
Unbelievable. And so I always want to start off with that because I do want to get like, he's also in his 6th year in college basketball, which some people can say, I don't want to add that in. Like, it doesn't matter to me. And that's fine. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to evaluate prospects. I do think it matters somewhat to me. There's some context there. I also find myself going, he has the complete green light there at Kansas, right? Like freedom to, and he should, like he's crushing it and he's doing a good job. I wonder what happens to the shooting when it's like, hey, you're going to get 5 corner threes and you better hit 2 of them or we can't play you. And it really, really matters how much you miss, especially those corner shots. But as people have said in the chat, if he can shoot, then he's very intriguing. Because I think I was talking about Reed Shepherd's hands. Kevin McCullough has some of the best and most accurate hands that I've scouted. And again, this has kind of been short time for me. I'm just truly, really, really growing into this. But he's amazing with his hands and how active. And that's super impactful at the NBA level. So he is an impactful defender. I think he can, attack a closeout, straight line. I think he has decent feel for the game with his passing and all of that. To me, it's like, can you make corner threes? Because I think he'll cut off the ball, offensive rebound, all of those stuff. Can he make corner threes when that's all he's going to get? The rhythm and the flow isn't as easy as what he's been like here with KU this season, where everything's kind of running through him.
Next, Devin Carter has been fantastic for Providence. I think that he has a real case for like Big East Player of the Year right now. Every time I watch Devin Carter, I'm just like blown away with how tough he is, how smart he is, how good his processing ability is. Obviously, the on-ball defense is great. He's super smart off the ball defensively, good passer. Like, just he impacts the game across the board in every single way.
Yeah, he's really good. He rebounds the ball as well. Like he averaged, I don't know. I've talked to some people and I think maybe I overvalue rebounding. And it's another one of those things like I'm like, I believe in it. I think it matters in some capacity. There has to be some sort of translation, whether it's the actual rebounding or even to just like feel and being able to read the ball and the floor and some of that stuff. This man is averaging 8 rebounds a game, Sam. Devin Carter, along with everything else he does, almost 20 points on 48, 36, 70, 3.5 assists almost, a steal and a half, almost a block, 8 rebounds a game on top of all of that. So I think he's been really good. This was not a player, to be honest with you, that I was super aware of. It's just been over the last month that because honestly, the Providence guys were okay. What does Bryce Hopkins add to his game? And I hope, as somebody that's gone through an ACL situation, like I hope Hopkins is doing well and recovering and all of that. And then Garway Dual, right? Like Garway was the guy that I was turning on Providence games to watch. And Devin Carter has been incredible. He's been awesome.
Yeah. And then the last guy we have to talk about here is Zach Edey, because Edey is a guy that's gotten a lot of publicity. Look, I think Zach Edey is like a late first round pick. Like I'd be totally good with that. I think he's going to be a really good backup center at some point. So physical, so strong. I think he's the best screen setter in college basketball. I've said that before on the show. I think he's unbelievable at that skill. He's tough. He's physical. He's strong. Like defensively, there are always going to be ball screen concerns. Just it will be, right? But he is a real dude who can establish post position against anybody, even like NBA level at all time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a whole lot to add to Edey. I think he's one of those guys, and there's something to this, that you know exactly what you're going to get from him. You know exactly what his weaknesses are. And so if you're a GM, an organization that says we need that type of player, we don't need him to do this or this. We need him to come in for 15 minutes a night, set crazy screens, play finish, use up 3 or 4 fouls, play in deep drop coverage, protect the rim, gobble up some rebounds, then you're going to get that exact thing from him night in and night out for, 8 years of his career. And so I don't think we have to overthink it and try to talk about, oh, well, if he does this or if he does that, or, I don't know that we get into as much of the nuance of his game, but that's okay with prospects sometimes. Like it just makes it super easy to I shouldn't say super easy, but it's a little bit easier of an eval and a projection. And then it's about who needs that, who values that, who does that really work for?
Yep, that's right. Okay, we said we'd take some questions at the end here. Let's buzz through a few,
Okay.
and then we have to talk about a trade that just happened, because of course we do. Is there a Peyton Watson in this class, 5-star high schooler who hasn't had an opportunity to show anything this year, or has significantly underperformed expectations? Look, I think the name here is probably Justin Edwards,
Sure.
right? I have not liked Justin Edwards' tape at all this season, frankly. I also really liked Justin Edwards at lower levels. Maybe it's just not a fit at Kentucky for some reason. Like maybe it's just not kind of working out. But honestly, I haven't seen much that like makes me think that this is like a one and done player. Over his 6 games before he got hurt in the Arkansas game, was playing like 19 minutes a night, shooting 37, 40, 67, averaging 4.7 points, 2.5 rebounds on a 46 true shooting percentage. Like it just honestly feels like he can't really do anything out there
So
right
that's
now.
I had him really low on my board, and I had a conversation with a
Oh, like
scout.
I have him like off. Like I have him like because I don't rank freshmen outside of the top 60.
Okay, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I don't have him there right now.
So he is, let me find him. Yeah, like he's in that range for me as well. And I only moved him. I was talking to a scout the other day, and they're like, "Well, it's a Kentucky thing, and yeah, I just have a hard time with that stuff sometimes. And maybe Peyton Watson is what the learning experience for me. Like I just need to
Yeah.
buy into this. That some of these guys we have to go off the high school film. I didn't love the high school stuff even as much. And then I listen. I've wanted to buy into, like, I kept him as high as I could for as long as I could. I mean, I think one of my most shocking moments on here was our first mock draft where you're like, Bryce, Justin Edwards is not still, a top 10 guy. And I'm like, I can't drop him after 4 games though, Sam. We've seen way more than 4 games now. And that's it for me, is like, if you ask me what he does well or whatever, like I just don't have it. I don't think he's that explosive of an athlete. The
I don't have that
defense,
answer either is the problem.
the defense is intriguing, but it's not like he's, Ryan Dunn or, these guys. It's like the defense is awesome and it doesn't matter that the offense isn't there. I'm just really struggling with him. I was looking through the rankings, you know, uh who was the first one here? Oh, Xavier Booker, but he was a guy I felt like was going to go to Michigan State and not get he just didn't seem to have the motor. Omaha Baloo is a kid that I love that, has fallen out of the rotation at Iowa State, but I don't think that's
Yeah.
like bad context or whatever. Like he
No,
may just not
I
as,
think he needs to like, you know, improve
yeah.
and get better.
And then Mara, I saw people ask about Ade Mara earlier in the chat.
Yep.
It's just stuff at UCL. Like that stuff hasn't worked out the way, Berke also hasn't necessarily had a great year either. So,
Yeah. Honestly, like the guy that like I like most that was a 5-star bigger wing kind of guy like Peyton Watson, who has been like hit or miss this year, is probably KJ Evans. Like truly at Oregon. Like I've really like KJ Evans is probably the closest thing to like an interesting Peyton Watson-y kind of bet right now, I think.
I've had him as high as like into the second round at times, and then like he just floats around there. So, but he's definitely had some interesting games. Like there's games he's looked really good.
Yeah, like his last little stretch has not been very good,
Sure.
to be completely honest. But
Yeah.
like he's probably the closest thing to this. From 24 seconds, thoughts on Kadari Richmond? Oh man, I can't quit you, Kadari Richmond. I thought Kadari was going to be like a first round pick as a sophomore at Syracuse, and man, it took a minute. It took a minute, but here we are at Seton Hall, and we're ready to go. I forgot he transferred to Seton Hall as well as a sophomore, but like, regardless, like I thought this dude was going to be like after that freshman year at Syracuse, I thought he was a real dude. He's been great this year. He has been like truly, truly great this season. And like, he's great defensively. He's an absolute dog on the perimeter, like great at getting to the basket. Man, he can't shoot. He really can't shoot, man. Like it's the shooting is going to be like a real problem for him moving forward. And if man, like I'd love to see it try. Like I'd love to see him in the G League. I don't know if I can get him to, top 50 or anything like that with the shooting being as poor as it is. And I don't think he can really play on the ball in the NBA because like the decision making isn't quite good enough. But yeah, man, he's an interesting one.
No, I'm really intrigued. I'm in the same boat as you, man. I like his game defensively. I think that was the part of his game I wasn't aware of, or maybe it wasn't there as much until this year. I don't know, but he definitely provides stuff there. But he can 17% right now from three. Now, the one thing, he's almost at 80% from the free throw line, Sam, and 74% for his career. But it doesn't always look great. Not necessarily the free throw, but the jump shot. And so I can't buy it. I love a lot of the other stuff with his game, but because of that, I don't know, man. I want to buy in. I'm like you. I can't quit him, but I can't get him as high as what I would want.
Yeah, another question here. How about a Jalen Brunson, the college star that people don't expect to project? Uh, Look, it's hard when someone brings up Jalen Brunson in this draft class. Like, the guy that just immediately pops to me is AJ Mitchell. Like, he just plays very similarly in terms of footwork, in terms of like playing off of 2 feet, and having a nice floater, having incredible like finishing ability. He's like 6'4", uh, just such a smart like decel athlete. Like, knows exactly how to get to his spots and figure things out. Averaging 20 points, 3.7 rebounds, 4.1 assists at Santa Barbara this season. 51% from the field, 40% from three, 83% from the line. Look, I have AJ Mitchell as the top 40 guy. I really like AJ Mitchell. Like I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm going through my list. I don't know that I have anybody that is like crushing college basketball right now that I feel like people aren't at least somewhat in on or think that they can. I don't think I have a name
Yep.
beyond that. So,
okay. Last thing here, Bryce. We have a trade. The Houston Rockets have traded Victor Oladipo and 3 second-round picks to acquire Steven Adams from the Memphis Grizzlies. What are your thoughts on this deal?
Well, my initial thought is this is the exact opposite of what we were talking about the other day. Who are we talking about the Rockets trade? Oh, Rob Williams. And
I thought they'd go for somebody that like could help them this year.
It was like we were having the Rob Williams versus Daniel Gafford debate in terms of, okay, well, yeah, Rob Williams, but he's not going to be available this year. So Daniel Gafford. So that they kind of went the opposite, right? Like they went the opposite of that idea. And so, he's on the books for 12.5 next year. I think I'm actually more intrigued in what this means for Memphis moving forward with, Steven Adams out of the picture and where they're going to go with that spot now. If there's an immediate move, like they obviously don't need an immediate move. Like this season kind of is what it is for them, but I'm interested there for the Rockets. I guess this means they're playing a little bit of the longer game. Like they're not as worried about it being a this year thing, but they're setting up for next year to make even more of a run. So, yeah, it's an interesting trade for two guys who won't play this year. So,
yeah. So to me, this is all about for Houston. Like, the one thing I did get right about Houston is that they wouldn't go after like a big contract guy.
sure.
I definitely felt good about the fact that like they weren't going to go after like a Clint Capella type who has like 22 million left on his season next season. They want to stay like relatively flexible enough to be able to make some moves here. Steven Adams has 1 year, 12.6 million left on his deal, and he's a great compliment for Şengün off the bench. Like I think that is a fantastic idea. He would be he'll be a real defensive difference maker for Houston. They very well could have like a top 3 or so defense in 2025 now. This season, it'll be a little bit more of a moving target with what they try and do with their backup center position. But Adams, as long as he gets back from this knee injury, I think he tore his PCL if I remember correctly. As long as he gets back from this knee injury, he is a really, really helpful defender and like made life so much easier for Jaren Jackson. He would make life a lot easier for Jabari Smith, like playing him in minutes, like learning how to be impactful on the weak side, like in ways like that. That's a really, really good move, I think, for Houston to get Steven Adams for next season. In terms of Memphis, they get 3 second-round picks, 2 of which are 2024 25s.
Okay.
Or 2 of them are 2024s, one's 2025.
Okay.
The 2024s, why do I think one of those might be their own? I thought that they might get their maybe they get their own back. Why do I think they might have owned that? Regardless, like Houston had these 2 picks. They had like Brooklyn's and Golden State's maybe, and then they had Oklahoma City's, I think. They didn't have their own, I'm like trying to remember off the top of my head like what these picks could be for 2024. So they have Brooklyn's 2024, they have Golden State's 2024, um maybe Cleve. Like it's like there are a lot of protections on these picks, and then they have Oklahoma City's for sure. I wonder if one of them is Oklahoma City's and then one of them is the Brooklyn one. Like that could line up in terms of make sure you get the top 40 pick if you're Memphis, but then also like take the other one. And then the 2025 second they have their own 2025 second as well as 2025 second from Oklahoma City. So 3 seconds there. Um, my guess for Memphis is this is mostly about clearing cap for them, and they want to be as like flexible as possible going into the off season. Uh, my guess on Memphis is that they'll look to be pretty aggressive this off season, building around like the Jaren Ja and Desmond Bain group. I wouldn't be surprised like if this isn't their last move. Uh, like maybe they make like a wing trade, like try and figure out like what to do with all this glut of Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, Jake LaRavia, David Roddy, Zaire Williams. Like they just have a lot of these young wings that they probably need to, you know, figure out maybe in terms of all of this. I wouldn't be surprised if like they end up doing something with one of those guys or maybe two of those guys. Who knows? But look, having a top look right now, at least, given that they got two 2024 picks per Woj, one of these is very likely to be a top 45
Yeah.
pick,
Top
at
4. I
least.
think right now one is a 38, one is a 40, and then like the Oklahoma City one would obviously be 56 or 7, whatever it
Right.
is.
Right. So I would expect that at least one of those will be a top 45 pick, maybe even like a top 40 pick if Brooklyn like completely falls off a cliff here, if they make moves at the deadline. So it'll be interesting to see what the exact picks are that they got. I think more than anything, though, I think this is about flexibility and like just
Sure.
being able to go into the summer with some interesting options available.
Are you in agreement that like Triple J is not the 5-man answer though? Like you need a Steven Adams type player next to Jaren Jackson Jr. Or so I guess my question is this strictly what you just said, or is there potential that it also maybe a side plot of it or whatever is a direction of, hey, we're going to play Jaren Jackson Jr. at the 5 moving forward?
I think it's probably that they'll go out and get another bigger body, but I don't have the answer to that. I don't know.
That's just where my head went is like, okay, which
Yeah.
does this have nothing to do with any of that whatsoever, which is entirely possible, or is it a little bit of a change in philosophy in terms of what we've seen when they're healthy, where you want to play Jaren Jackson Jr. next to a bigger 5 and let him kind of be that off-ball roamer type of player and gobble up rebounds.
Yeah. I'm like trying to pull up some numbers here while we're talking, just in terms of what the minutes with like Jaren Jackson essentially at the 5. So like when Santi Aldama's out there, like he's basically playing the 5.
Yeah.
So like the Jaren at the 5 minutes this year, they're giving up like 114.6 points per 100. Let's see what that would be. That'd probably be like top 12-ish in the league, top of my head, something like that. So not terrible. Like they've been good defensively this year. Jaren has done Jaren has a very real
he's been good,
man,
right?
am I good, by the way. 12th in defense. Exactly. Jaren has been really good on defense this year. Like really, really, really good on defense this year. To the point where I think he is still an all defense guy. They're 8th in defense right now because of him. So yeah, it'll be interesting. Question, like, does Memphis like a center in this draft? Maybe. I don't know the answer to that. It's possible, but it'd be weird for them, I think, to take a big, like if they end up at like 12 or 14 or something, they could end up with like Yves Messier, like, could they go nuts and take like a? Here's the thing: Memphis's draft philosophy is so different than other teams. Like they've just proven that in the past, right? Like they will take David Roddy at number 22 if they like David Roddy, right? They will take Zaire Williams at 10. They will take, uh, I think everybody had Laravia right around 2025 where they took him, but they'll take Vince Williams. They just do things very differently in terms of the way they think about it. So uh, I would. It's always hard to predict what they're going to do. I think.
And
Like I feel like I tend to think quite similarly to them, but they diverge from me a little bit as well. Like there will be like the David Roddy thing is like a pure divergence. Like from like I did not like I didn't have David Roddy in the top 60 of my board, and they took him in the first. So like, but I really liked Laravia. I really liked like GG Jackson. I think like is the highest player on my board when they took him. Like they do things that I quite like, and I like their style philosophically. It's just like um they do things differently than other teams, I think is what I would say.
And they're at 7 right now, which I mean allows you to kind of go wherever you want in this draft. That's a lot of different ways. I just wanted to give Jaren Jackson Jr. some more flowers. He's doing that defense on also career highs in field goal attempts, points, I believe 3-point attempts, free throw attempts, all of that. So he's taking a huge offensive load night in and night out without Ja, without Bane a lot, and still playing that level of defense. So just some flowers to him for just the kind of season he's having, not just defensively, but even kind of all around.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's all that we've got today. It's 2 hours. We should stop talking about all of this. The All-Star reserves are getting announced, I guess.
I wondered if that would happen while we were still going.
Yeah. All-Star reserves for the West, it looks like Curry, Kawhi, Anthony Davis, Karl Towns, Paul George, Anthony Edwards, Devin Booker. So no Sabonis, no Fox, no Lowry Markkanen.
So a big reward for the 1-seeded Timberwolves. That means the Thunder also only end up with 1, which was probably what was going to happen, but
yeah.
No Jamal Murray.
No Jamal Murray, it looks like.
No Pelicans player.
No Pelicans player, that's right. Yeah, the big ones here are Lowry, De'Aaron Fox, and Demonis. Like no Kings is definitely surprising to me.
Yeah, as the 5th seed.
Yeah, that's one that I'm pretty stunned about, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah, that does not really compute for me, but whatever. They wanted to give the Timberwolves 2, so Karl Towns is here. Let's see. Are we gonna get the East while we're here?
Has Woj or Shams tweeted the Shams? Joel Embiid has suffered torn meniscus in his left knee.
Seriously, Shams just tweeted that? Did you just get
1 minute ago? Yeah, I mean it's like it's my like it's my whatever. It's like it's not a fake Shams, it's my like notification on Shams.
You see that? Okay, so yeah, we have to talk about Joel, don't we?
I mean,
do we? Like we talked about that a little bit, I guess, on the last episode. Not quite about the whole thing of him getting hurt, because that happened when I was at the U20 Australian tournament. But like,
I mean, the thing is, the Sixers are already at 5th in the East, Sam. So, like team wise, who knows where they end up? And then, I mean, the MVP stuff is gone now. Like we spent a whole how many ever minutes talking about him as NBA MVP. Like that's gone. Like there's zero chance that he wins any awards this year. I mean, meniscus. I saw somebody ask. Like it's very varying. Like the meniscus stuff can be There's kind of pretty, it could be 4 weeks, it could be 6 weeks, it could be 8 weeks. Like it
Yeah, but
depends.
the way that you do the shorter recovery, from what I understand, is like that you like cut the meniscus, and like you don't do that with Joel.
Yeah,
Like
correct.
that's a horrendous idea.
Yeah, the short version is you
Um,
shave it off and, whatever, and, you get back in 4 weeks. Like, this could legit be into the season for him.
yeah, that's bad. That's like the. I mean, look, it's not like the worst possible outcome, but that's a bad one. That sucks. Yeah, Joel gonna miss the rest of the year. So I mean, yeah, I'm probably gonna just have to podcast about that at a later date. Because that feels, we've gone for 2 hours. We can't go longer than this. Um, let's
My
call it there.
my wife has
Maybe I
walked
will.
in twice, and I can't tell by the look on her face whether she's in a good mood, a bad mood, or in a different mood. So,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what I'm walking into whenever this is over. The 3 little ones may be driving her crazy, so I may be in trouble by the time I walk out.
yeah. I think we've got to get you out of there. Um, Yeah, look, the odds are there's a chance I'll podcast tomorrow if like more of this crazy stuff happens. Uh, I will be back either tomorrow or Sunday with Bryce. Uh, Potentially Sunday at this point. We'll see. Just depends on how much news breaks at this point. That's where we're at. Will there just be more news that continues to break? If there is, we'll be back. If not, we'll see. Uh, Man, crazy way to end this show. Uh, yeah, injury to lateral meniscus in the knee. Um, so Mark Stein is saying a little bit more. Let's talk about this while we're here now. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
No, you're
Uh,
good.
the Sixers say the MRI reveals Joel Embiid has sustained an injury to the lateral meniscus in his left knee. No formal recovery timetable has yet been established. Philadelphia says Embiid will be out through the weekend while a treatment plan is finalized. Let's be clear about this. Philadelphia reporting injuries is a catastrophe. So, like, this does not give us any more information than what we had. This is like a softer way to phrase it than what was immediately reported. But, yeah, yeah. Fascinating deal right now with Joel. We like, I feel like we don't know enough on like how the Sixers are even going to handle this
Yeah.
now. So, all right, Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah. So at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, DMs are always open. I love talking hoops. This is my life. So if you guys ever want to talk about anything, draft, the NBA, whatever, hit me up. And if you happen to be a Pistons fan out there that's not currently listening, the Pistons Pulse, we record live on Mondays, Tuesdays, dropping on Tuesday, Wednesdays on all podcast platforms. Check that out if you have any interest. Sam, as always, I had a blast. I enjoy talking NBA draft. This was a lot of fun. But whether it's draft, straight NBA, whatever, I always enjoy it. So I appreciate you.
It's the best. I'm so glad that we did this. Bryce is super fun to talk to about basketball. So that will happen again, at least on Sunday. Who the fuck
Cool.
knows? Like, maybe the NBA is just going to like break at this point, and we need to continue to talk about like all of this moving forward. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen necessarily. Yeah, let's move forward and get out of here, even though we haven't seen the East yet. We'll be back at some point soon. Until next time, we'll talk soon.